picked dead last by the Big 12 media, picked last by a lot of national media, just talking about the program overall. And not only did you throw that in everyone's faces, you win the Big 12 championship, you make the college football playoff in one of the all-time great college football games against Texas, and now the expectations are completely different. How has it been different from where we were last year to where you sit now?
Yeah, I mean, everything's changed, recruiting, how the media's talking to us, how we have to, view this off season. And, it's going to be a different approach for sure. Last year was, get people to believe in us. And this year, we got to kind of limit what we're taking in and focus on what we got to do every single day. And that's going to be the biggest key to our success this year is just seeing, how much we can really lock in on ourselves every single day, day in and day out, and, not worry about what other people say.
You know what I find interesting too with you is you transfer in from Michigan State. You were out there for a year. There was the whole quarterback situation at ASU. Jaden Rashada was still there. There was an open battle in camp. And Sam, candidly, coming to Tempe, you were also a relative unknown coming into the season. And then little by little, we called your game week 3 on Thursday night against Texas State. And every single week, there seemed to be improvement to where now you're being mentioned is a sleeper Heisman Trophy candidate. How has that adjustment gone from you going from a relative unknown to Big 12 Freshman of the Year and now someone people are looking at as a Heisman candidate and NFL quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll sit back and really think about it. It's crazy from that perspective, but it's the same. It's what I believed in myself since day one. It's just other people are waking up to it now, where I finally proved it on some scale. So it doesn't change how I view myself, but it definitely makes me understand how other people are going to view me, and then how I have to look to the public eye and everything like that.
What brought you to Arizona State?
It was really just Coach Dillingham and Coach Arroyo. Just talking to them schematically, their passion for the game, their track record, how they view me in the offense and how they view me as a player and a leader, and the intangibles that they liked about my game. And it was really impressive what they had to say, and everything that they would say, just drew me in more and more, and everything like that. So, I got here and it was the best situation I could ask for.
I mean, plus, Sam, the weather's perfect. The scenery at Arizona State is good. I can imagine, or I at least hope, something about Tempe and the campus drew you in as well.
Yeah, honestly, at first I was a little hesitant because of, everybody always talks about the party life, this and third, and you got so many distractions. It honestly made me not want to come here and get distracted from football. But once you get here and, you understand what it is, and you just lock in on yourself, and then you have everything you want to do. You have a great dinner setting in Old Town, and, you can go play golf, and you have a bunch of connections out here. So, you get your work in, and then you're living in, such a pretty state, and, great weather year round. And honestly, I'll definitely have a spot here in my off seasons when I'm older and everything like that. So, Arizona is one of my home places now.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in Scottsdale. I know. I went to Scottsdale, Saguaro. I grew up there. Like, I miss it every day living up here in Connecticut, where ESPN is headquartered. Let me see if I got the story right. So Kenny recruited you while at Oregon because you were the Oregon Offensive Player of the Year. Did you guys have a relationship in recruiting from when you were playing high school ball in Oregon?
So he was my first offer when he was at Florida State. And we really didn't talk after that when he was at Oregon. And then we didn't talk until I hit the portal out of Michigan State.
And then that conversation went in, and how did that conversation start?
It's like, it was like, hey, I recruited you a few years ago, but there was nothing more to it. I wasn't worried about that too much.
What has he meant to the program?
He meant everything. I mean, culture, bringing in the guys. He brings in players that fits him and the culture, which is, a recipe for success. You look at our season last year, and we don't do what we do without the personalities that we have. If you take the same player and put a different personality, in that player, then they're not going to have the same success that we had as a program and as a team. So he understands who he is, who he needs to recruit, the type of people that want to be here, and then we go from there.
Yeah, when did you know? Because I talk to players and coaches, and they kind of have that tipping point when they knew something special was happening. When did you know last season? And the season really started just kind of ho hum. When did you know something special was developing?
I'd probably say, we kind of felt it a little bit after the Utah game, but then I got hurt. And then once I came back and we played Oklahoma State, we really started rolling as a team. We went there and just played really, really, complete football on all aspects of the game, and we just kind of started rolling from there. And then Kansas State, and then and then we played BYU, and it was like, well, this is probably to get into the Big 12 championship, and then won that game, and then it was like, holy crap, we're really doing this. And it was like each week we really didn't know how good we were. We are just getting better and better, and it was crazy to see, just the growth that we were having, and just how far we could really go. And, it was a week to week thing.
Was it a belief? Because when you look at each week, I mean, you guys had talent. Tice was great. We'll get into Skattebo in a minute, but how much belief was permeating in that locker room and at practice when this thing is happening right in front of you?
Yeah, it's hard to say because we weren't talking about, winning the Big 12 since day one. We were just
Really?
talking about no, we were just talking about winning that game or winning that day. And I think that was one of our superpowers last year, was just focusing on the day at hand. So it really wasn't a major belief from the very beginning, but as the season went on, people saw what we could do. And we never mentioned it, like Dilly would never say, hey, we're going to win the Big 12 or this is our goal. That's one thing that he doesn't do. He just says, how good are we going to be today? How much are we going
Yeah.
to push each other?
I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked about Coach Dillingham. What did Cam Skattebo mean to Arizona State football?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a player that is just so special in terms of, not only the plays that he makes physically, but the way that his presence is felt on the field, the physicality that he brings and sets a tone, the comfort that he gives teammates. I would just be in the backfield just talking to him the whole time, and it was super fun because the way that he views the game is so special. He's such a brilliant mind, and he views it so unique. So it's like, when I'm talking to him, you see how creative he is. And, because for me, I have to stay pretty on schedule and,
Yeah.
get the offense to flow and all that. And then he's saying some creative stuff back there. And, we're in practice, messing around, handing the ball off, pitching it back to each other, tossing it, going out for a fake pass and stuff like that. And, that's a super fun player to play with. And, so his mind and physical ability just brought so much juice and passion and love for the game that it's so infectious.
What is your favorite Cam Skattebo story that just kind of puts him into perspective?
I'd probably say all I'd say so throughout the season we would go in Wildcat packages in practice, and he would run the ball, and then I'd make a move, and he'd throw it to me when we weren't supposed to, and our coach was like, don't do that in the game, da da da. And we'd always mess around, we'd say, we're probably gonna do it, which is pretty funny. And so in practice we do that all the time. So we're playing Iowa State and we're running Wildcat, and I'm out at wideout, and there was no hole, so he started running backwards, and he just starts running like 20 yards back. And I'm looking over there like, what is going on? It's first and goal. We can't lose yards. So, but he knows I'm out there at receiver, and the whole week we'd been saying like, I'm gonna run a slant and he's gonna throw it to me. But the fact that he didn't throw it to me originally, I ran back to block for him to reverse the whole field, and I was gonna crack block someone, and hopefully he got the edge and could go. But he knew where I was, so he just threw the ball up where he thought I would be. But I was coming back to block, and just the fact that he knew where I was supposed to be, and I didn't think that he was thinking like that. It was crazy to see him actually throw the ball. Luckily, it didn't get picked. But
Yeah,
I don't
how
know.
did Kenny handle that?
I think he was just at a loss of words. He didn't really know what to say. I think they showed him on the camera after on the sideline. He was just sitting there like stone face, and they said in the box up there they were just completely quiet, like nobody said a word, and then they just moved on to the next play.
What is he like in the huddle? What was he like in the huddle during these games, during that stretch run that really defined the season?
He's not saying too much. I don't think anybody should say too much in the huddle.
Mhm.
Um, I'd say he'd say certain things like, he'd call up players or call up the line and be like, I really need you guys here. One thing that I saw him do that I'd never seen anybody else do is he would kind of tell the O-line how to block. Like, he's not the O-line coach, but he's telling them how to block because he knows how he likes to run through certain gaps and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty special. And I'm like that with my receivers and, in terms of pass pro for the O-line, but I've never told somebody how to run block.
Yeah, but
so,
he's just a leader on the field with everything.
Yeah, he just sees the game so well that, he's able to say certain things and it makes sense and it works. So people listen to him.
Give me something I can feel. Light a cigarette just so I can breathe.